as seasons progress and as we're hopping into progressing seasons, it's time to hop into soccer time, Connor. The MLS released their schedule, and their season is starting April 16th, with plans on ending November 7th, and then they will have the playoffs coming for starting November 19th. So, how are you feeling geared up for some MLS soccer?
I am very excited for MLS. It is very sad to have yet another American star. In terms of MLS, it's very sad to have yet another American star leave the league as we get to wave goodbye to Jordan Morris, and I get to wave goodbye to that pass. Jordan Morris, of course, left the Seattle Sounders, went to the went to Swansea City in the championship. Another player that is playing over in England from MLS, Daryl Dike of our beloved Orlando City Lions. No, I think one of the really fun things that I have come to really like about MLS is I always say it's not like the best quality league, right? Like you can be a fan of MLS and say that, but there's always a ton of parity. You never really know who's going to be good, who's going to not be so good at the beginning of the season. There's a ton of travel, uh, a lot of things to go on there. So very excited. I'm working on my Orlando City takes. I'm excited to bust those out as our conversation continues and as the season continues. But yeah, how are you feeling, Rutledge, about this summer heating up soccer wise?
I'm not excited to be sitting at Orlando City games in July because those have
Oh, they'll be
been
at night. They'll be 8 o'clock games.
they need to be because there's been a couple nooners where even just watching it on TV, the seats hurt you. They just look so hot. Those purple seats absorb all the sun. Um, I am
That's true.
I'm definitely excited because I feel like the league, especially now with adding Austin, MLS is definitely starting to garner stronger national attention, and it's been around for a while, but people are sort of getting into the league and the country sort of knowing how to market it better. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I pulled some preseason favorites off of just MGM Bet, so you can use these to make your wagers. But preseason favorites are LAFC, the Sounders, Columbus Crew, which Columbus beat Seattle last year, NYCFC, and then tied for fifth is Philly and Toronto. So that's a daunting east side of the conference with a lot of favorites. It'll be definitely
Yeah,
big.
no, I think Philly is always a very interesting team in my opinion because it just is an organization. They never make the big splashes, right? You always can tell the flavor of some of those organizations. The biggest splashes Philly will make will be U.S. men's national team players, uh, or younger players on their roster. But they're always pretty solid, right? Um, NYCFC would be interesting to see how they respond. I think both teams from New York are always a fun follow. Just not only just kind of their culture and their flavor, things like that. I was really sad to not hear you say Orlando.
Sadly, Orlando, I believe, is the number six favorite. So they're a favorite in the top 10 of bets for a championship, and they've been doing a lot of big moves and bringing over a lot of players. Of course, you don't know the Orlando City coach actually used to coach. He was in, help me, Connor, I blanked. He was in Houston.
He was in
Oh, he
Dallas.
was
He
in
was the old
Dallas.
FC Dallas coach.
He was in Dallas when they made their run and when they started really become a big deal. So we, as a faithful, are very excited. When you say Orlando, the first team I like to think of is Atlanta. And Atlanta did not have a good showing. Actually, fired their coach and has a new coach. So I'll be interested to see how they bounce back and what they do.
Yeah, I think Atlanta. They sold Miggy Almiron, to Newcastle, and then Joseph Martinez, who that guy's a warrior. He has made me say not so many kind things to him before at Orlando City Atlanta games. But he gets hurt last year, and as I've said before, your best plays tend to work when your best players are there. And Atlanta just kind of ran out of good players. And some of the systems that they try to run, possession based, 4-3-3, which is what their first coach really tried to do. You need very skilled players, right? I think MLS, you get a lot of just athletic players that'll run kind of all over the place. And you're making quite a run here, Rutledge.
We're really
Um,
pushing it.
but I think that was one thing that Atlanta struggled with was when they had less skilled players and more of kind of your standard MLS quality players. What's that going to do for you? And we found out what'll happen. So it was definitely nice to see Orlando beat Atlanta for the first time. I was definitely into that.
That was a very good feeling. It reminded me of when I went to an Orlando Atlanta game in Atlanta, and as I was getting frustrated, as you do, I remember Atlanta fans saying, "Just feel bad for him," and it felt so good to finally beat them.
Absolutely. So, have you been following some of the moves Orlando City has been making this year?
I have, but I'm sure that our listeners haven't. So, Connor, take them through that, and then let's save a little time as well to talk about some games that maybe we're gonna excited to watch on the schedule.
For sure, for sure. So, I mean, really, the big move they brought in a player named Pato, older fella. He's in his 30s, but has had many stops around Europe. Should be used primarily as sort of will get starts from time to time. Maybe come off the bench. Just adding some more offensive depth. He's really been the biggest signing so far for Orlando City this offseason. Nani's staying around. And I would say that's just the one thing I want to make sure we give a shout out to Pato. So Orlando now has the duck, which Pato is Portuguese for duck. Galese is known as El Pulpo, or the octopus. And then Urso, one of our defensive midfielders, that is Portuguese for bear. So we've got a duck, an octopus, and a bear on the Orlando City roster. So definitely excited for that. Um, Rutledge, speaking of that, right, Orlando City starts April 17th against Atlanta. So right out of the chutes, there's not going to be any love lost. But really the first big game that I'm excited about outside of this game that you've now taken the lead on
There we go.
uh, is Inter Miami on June 25th. That is, I think that the Orlando Miami Derby is going to really heat things up.
It it's really big, and I'm excited to finally have a rival in state. As the state of Florida being so big, it's good to have someone around for us to play. Of course, last year Miami did not look good, um, and we watched them. Connor and I jumped up in the air and hugged each other when Orlando beat Miami in the bubble tournament at ESPN Wide World of Sports. But the big thing, Connor, that I always think of when I think Miami is they just seem to be the name that comes up in every sports star where you hear uh, Ronaldo or other names. Maybe they'll come to Miami. So, what's your take on having other stars come just to hang out with David Beckham and go to South Beach?
I think that there are a few. Here's some things that Miami has going for it. Number one is that it's an international city, so I think that there's folks that are gonna, maybe a Ronaldo or a Messi. I mean, that have probably spent a lot of time in Miami already and can feel very comfortable there. Two, I think that you're going to have some really quality. Um, I think big city, right? A lot of buzz. Um, on that front, I think that it's going to be important for Miami to win because if you're looking for an international city with a lot of buzz, why don't you just go play for LAFC? They're already crushing it, and they have Will Ferrell as sort of their super fan, who I kind of think Will Ferrell is cooler than David Beckham.
That's
I
a
think
that's a hot take.
that it is. I think, yeah. So, and it, when Kaká came to the MLS, I mean, he didn't have to go play in New York. He had other relationships, things like that. So it'll be the one thing that'll be interesting will just to see if you know if there's like a Manchester United kind of pipeline that comes in, or if there's a English, kind of former English national team that comes in, and I could tell that my take was so hot and you were so mesmerized that you got a 5-second violation here with 26 seconds left here on Friend Stream Sports. So excited to have you out. But yeah, I would say the biggest games that I'm excited about, Rutledge, going to be are going to be that some of those Inter Miami games, the derbies, the Atlanta United games, and then some of those just traditional top teams in the East. Some of those teams that are going to be in there at the end. Your Torontos or your Phillies. Yeah. So those are some of my thoughts.
I'm big on the excitement about also that MLS does something that you and I believed in very well in sports, which is branding and taking time to take rivalry week, and that they call August 21st rivalry weekend, and that's where Columbus and Seattle are going to play, and that's where New York City, uh, that's where NYCFC, and that's where the Red Bulls are going to play. So I like that MLS is starting to take that branding about it, as this is a crucial inbounding of the ball as we go into this possession. And Connor just lobs it up there, hoping for the best.
Yacked it
Fouls
up.
it.
No good.
But I'm with you. What are those top things across the league going to look like? Um, how does this year with the fan experience go? As MLS was the first sport to come back, and now we're back. And then how does it go with? Does the fan experience normalize? What do their COVID protocols look like as people start getting vaccines? Um, Basketball, of course, is such a passionate sport that when you're in it, you don't just love, or not basketball, soccer is such a passionate sport that when you're in it, like others, you love your team and you support them. Um, as an Orlando fan, it feels really good to have us make a bunch of roster moves and make a bunch of other moves because we have been to liken it the Cleveland Browns of the MLS, to where you think they're going to be good and they're not, and that's just kind of how we live here on I-4 corridor. But overall, super hyped about it. The one team that has not been sort of favored this year, which is interesting, is you don't hear a lot about the Portland Timbers. And Portland, of course, won the MLS is Back Cup. But where are they going to go this year? How far are they going to go? Who's going to take the West? Does Seattle hold it? Um, how well does Austin do? I think that's where, if there's some parity I want to see in soccer, is that the teams that have kind of been good stay good in the organizations, but you've had Nashville come in, New York City, Orlando, Miami, now Austin, Cincinnati, who was not on my list for top favorites. So how do we see a new team kind of arise? And how do
Yeah,
we see them kind of take off?
I think that Atlanta really broke the mold in terms of teams coming in and being really good. Or we were hoping, obviously, for Orlando, for that to be the case, but we obviously didn't get to see that. And I think that Austin. I mean, Austin will probably struggle. They'll probably look a little bit more like Cincinnati than than Atlanta or NYC, who did make the playoffs as well their first year. I think it's difficult. The big thing, Rutledge, and I remember one of the things that you always like to talk about is the quote Madden rule doesn't work all the time, right? You're you're just putting all the big players in at the same time. That's not a thing. So as we finish out this game here, and I'm fighting till the very end because I'm a fighter, Rutledge.
You are fouling as much as you possibly can.
Got to. And with Trey Young on the line, we'll see. He's got a little bald spot. So I think that I think that Austin games will be a lot of fun to see for sure. And it'll be interesting to see how that fan base continues to evolve.
What is
But
the
yeah,
over under? Wait, here, total segment disruption. What is the over under on how many Keep Austin Weird references are at the Austin home games?
oh, so many.
Like, give
Ooh,
me a number. Like, what's the line?
I would say that there will be at least 3 signs in the stadium per game.
Okay. I'm taking the over on that, by the way. I think 3 is the line, but I'd take the over.
And you took the over on me tonight.